7 markers in this video. The full listens actively competency at PCC level. We will hold the multi-channel listening pattern as we walk every C6 marker. The cuts that decide marker calls in C6, 6.2 versus 6.7 get their own treatment. By the end, you can identify any C6 marker in a real session, and you know which channel of listening the candidate is using and which they are missing. Quick reference card open. Let's go. Competency 6 is listens actively. ACC asked you to listen. PCC asked you to listen on 3 channels at once. What the client says, what the client does not say, and how the body and energy shift. Plus a 4th move, customizing your questions and observations from what you have learned across the session. 7 markers. 6.1 customizes from learned context. 6.2 explores the words. 6.3 explores the emotions. 6.4 explores the energy and nonverbal. 6.5 explores how the client perceives themselves or their world. 6.6 allows the client to complete speaking. 6.7 reflects to ensure clarity. 6.1 and 6.5 are C2 proxy markers. 6.6 and 6.7 are listening containers. They hold the work the other markers do. The full demonstration is the coach listening on all the channels and using what they hear. 3 channels. Hold them as you listen. What the client says, the literal words. 6.2 lives here. The coach picks up the client's word and asks about it. What the client does not say, the emotion the client did not name but is clearly present. The perception of self that is implicit. 6.3 and 6.5 live here. The coach reads what the client is feeling but did not name, or how the client is seeing themselves in this moment, how the body and energy shift, the pause, the voice softening, the shift in posture you can hear in the audio. 6.4 lives here. The coach explores what just happened in the client's body. PCC level listening tracks all 3 channels at once. ACC level listening usually tracks 1, the words. When you mentor at PCC, watch which channels the candidate is using. The fastest way to develop a thin C6 demonstration is to add the channels the candidate is missing. 6.1, coach's questions and observations are customized by using what the coach has learned about who the client is or the client situation. 6.1 is the customization marker. It looks backward across the session. Something the client said in minute 3 returns in minute 30 as the seed of the coach's next question. What this sounds like. You mentioned earlier that you grew up running your own thing, and now we are talking about this corporate move. Is there something about being inside someone else's structure that is part of what you are weighing? That is 6.1. The coach is using what they learned about the client to shape the next inquiry. 6.1 is a C2 proxy. Listening test. Is the coach asking from learned context or asking generic open-ended questions? Generic questions are not 6.1, regardless of how good they are. The marker requires the coach to be using what this specific client said in this specific session. 6.2. Coach inquires about or explores the words the client uses. 6.2 is the lexical marker. The client used a specific word. The coach picks it up. What this sounds like. The client says, I have to figure this out. The coach says, figure out. What is the figuring you mean? Or the client says, I am stuck. The coach says, stuck. What does stuck feel like in this? Both are 6.2. The coach is treating the client's language as data and exploring what the language carries. The marker is most often missed when the coach paraphrases instead of inquires. Paraphrasing the client's words is 6.7, not 6.2. 6.2 is asking about the word. Listening test. Did the coach pick up a specific word the client used and ask about it as a word? If yes, 6.2 is present. 6.3, coach inquires about or explores the client's emotions. 6.3 fires when the coach attends to what the client is feeling, whether the client named it or not. What this sounds like. There was something in your voice when you talked about that team meeting. What is the feeling underneath? Or more directly, you said you were frustrated. What is frustration about for you here? Both are 6.3. The coach is making space for the affect. 6.3 is one of the channels the client may not have voiced. The coach reads the energy or the cadence and inquires into the feeling. ACC trained coaches sometimes wait for the client to name the emotion before asking about it. PCC level 6.3 will go ahead of the client's naming. The coach offers the read and invites the client into it. Listening test. Did the coach inquire into a feeling, either named or implicit, in a way that gave the client room to explore it? 6.4, coach explores the client's energy shifts, nonverbal cues, or other behaviors. 6.4 is the body marker, the pause, the breath, the shift in tone the coach can hear over the phone. What this sounds like. You got quiet just now. What just happened? Or your voice softened when you said her name. Is there something there? Both are 6.4. The coach is naming the shift and inviting the client to look at it. The marker requires the coach to make the observation visible to the client. Internal noticing that the coach does not voice does not demonstrate 6.4. The client has to know the coach saw the shift. 6.4 is a marker many ACC coaches skim. They notice the energy, but stay with the words. PCC level 6.4 is willing to interrupt the words to attend to the body. Listening test. Did the coach name an energy shift, nonverbal cue, or behavior and explore it? If yes, 6.4. 6.5. Coach inquires about or explores how the client currently perceives themselves or their world. 6.5 is the perception marker. The coach asks about the client's lens, how the client sees themselves in this, how the client is reading the situation, what this sounds like. How do you see yourself in this team conflict right now? Or, when you describe your boss that way, what does that tell you about how you are reading him? Both are 6.5. The coach is making the client's worldview an object the client can examine. 6.5 is a C2 proxy. It evidences coaching mindset alongside listens actively. The marker is forward-looking and self-referential. It is not asking what the client thinks about a topic. It is asking how the client perceives themselves or their situation. The reflexive turn is the marker. Listening test. Did the coach ask the client to look at how they themselves are seeing this, their self-perception, or their perception of the world? If yes, 6.5. 6.6. Coach allows the client to complete speaking without interrupting, unless there is a stated coaching purpose to do so. 6.6 is the listening container. The coach holds space for the client to finish the thought, including the silences inside the thought. What this sounds like. The client is mid-sentence. They pause. They start again. They finish. The coach has not interrupted. The coach has not made encouraging noises that pulled the client back. The client got to where they were going. The marker has a permitted exception, unless there is a stated coaching purpose to do so. A coach who interrupts to redirect because the session is veering off outcome, can still demonstrate 6.6 if the interruption is purposeful and named. Can I pause you for a moment? I want to come back to what you said before this. That is permitted. Listening test. Did the coach allow the client to complete their thinking, and where the coach interrupted was the purpose stated? If yes to both, 6.6. 6.7. Coach succinctly reflects or summarizes what the client communicated to ensure the client's clarity and understanding. 6.7 is the reflection marker. The coach paraphrases what the client said briefly, and the paraphrase serves the client, not the coach. What this sounds like. So what I'm hearing is, the issue is not the workload, it is that you do not feel asked. That is 6.7, brief, specific. The client confirms or corrects. The marker has two requirements: succinct, not a recap of the whole session, and ensures the client's clarity. The paraphrase invites confirmation. A coach who reflects without checking has not demonstrated the second half. PCC level 6.7 sometimes includes what the client did not say, but seems to be carrying. The reflection names both what was said and what is implicit. The client's response, yes, but actually, is what tells you the marker landed. Listening test. Did the coach reflect briefly and check whether it landed? 6.2 and 6.7 both involve the client's language. The cut decides which marker fires. 6.2 is inquiring about a specific word. The coach hears stuck and asks, stuck. What does that mean for you? The marker is in the question that opens the word. 6.7 is brief reflection plus a check. The coach paraphrases what the client said and invites confirmation. The marker is in the summary that lands and the check that follows. Concrete. Client says, I have to figure this out before the weekend. Coach says, figure out. What does figured out look like for you? That is 6.2, inquiring about the word. Same opening. Coach says instead, so the deadline is not just by the weekend, it is that something has to be settled before then. Is that close? That is 6.7, brief reflection and check. Both can fire across the same session. Both are listening markers. The cut is in what the coach did with the language, asked about a word, or summarized and checked. C6 done. 7 markers walked, the multi-channel listening pattern in your ear, the within C6 cut named. Next video. Competency 7 evokes awareness. 8 markers. The second who versus what pair. The questioning markers, quality and economy at PCC level. The texture markers that distinguish PCC language from ACC language. Listens actively, gives you the input channels. Evokes awareness, uses what you heard.